How does a man turn into the joke at his own birthday, surrounded by laughter as he collapses to the ground? Why did no one pause to ask if I was injured, even as the pain overwhelmed me? Could a single X-ray image in a white hospital room finally uncover the truth my own family tried to dismiss with laughter? I'm Ned Mercer, and at 42, I thought I'd learned to accept my place in the family hierarchy. I was wrong. The text came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing technical reports at my supervisor desk. Ned's birthday party this Saturday at our place, 6 p.m., don't be late. From Trina, my brother Evan's wife of 8 years. The casual tone, the assumption I'd just show up, the complete lack of actual invitation, it was peak Trina. I stared at my phone screen in my quiet office, watching my reflection in the black glass. 42 years old, graying at the temples, wearing the same style of button-down shirt I'd worn for a decade. Reliable, boring, predictable Ned. My finger hovered over the reply button. Part of me wanted to type back, "I'm busy," but we both knew I wasn't. Saturday nights for me meant takeout and Netflix, maybe a call with my best friend Sam. The exciting life of the family's designated wallflower. "Thanks," I typed back. Simple, non-committal, safe. The thing about being the older brother who never quite measured up is that you learn to read between the lines. Trina's text wasn't really an invitation. It was a summons. Another opportunity for the family to gather around and watch Evan shine while I provided the contrast. The responsible one. The quiet one. The one who always cleaned up everyone else's messes. Saturday arrived with that particular weight that comes with obligatory family gatherings. I stood in my apartment's small bathroom, adjusting my collar in the mirror. The same face that had disappointed my mother when I chose technical work over law like Evan. The same face that had never quite learned to laugh along when the joke was always on me. My phone buzzed. "Sam. How's the birthday boy feeling? Ready for another thrilling Mercer family adventure?" I smiled despite myself. Sam Arnell had been my college roommate, my best man at my brief marriage, and the one person who seemed to understand that family gatherings weren't always celebrations for everyone involved. "Counting the minutes," I texted back. "Remember what we talked about. You don't owe them anything." But that's where Sam was wrong. In families like mine, the quiet ones always owe something. Patience, understanding, the willingness to be the punchline so everyone else can feel clever. Evan and Trina's house sat in one of those neighborhoods where every lawn looked professionally maintained and every driveway held cars that cost more than my annual salary. Evan had done well in real estate, riding the wave of his natural charisma and Trina's aggressive networking. They were the golden couple, and they made sure everyone knew it. I parked my modest sedan behind Mom's car and walked up the stone pathway. Through the large windows, I could see the warm glow of the open-plan kitchen and dining area, figures moving around, the easy laughter of people comfortable in their own superiority. "Ned!" Trina's voice hit me before I'd fully stepped through the door. She was 37, but dressed like she was 25, all bright colors and aggressive enthusiasm. "There's our birthday boy!" The way she said it, like I was a child, like my actual age was just another family joke, set my teeth on edge. But I smiled. I always smiled. "Happy birthday, big brother." Evan appeared with a beer in hand, that easy grin that had charmed teachers, girlfriends, and clients his entire life. At 38, he'd somehow managed to look younger than me, like confidence was a preservative. "Thanks for having me," I said, accepting his brief hug, the same ritual we'd performed for years. "Of course. Family's family, right?" Trina linked her arm through mine with that overly familiar grip that had always made me uncomfortable. "Come on, everyone's eager to see you." Everyone was Mom, Evan's neighbor couple, and Trina's sister visiting from out of state. A small crowd, but large enough for an audience, large enough for whatever entertainment they had planned. The evening followed its predictable pattern. Stories about Evan's latest real estate triumph. Trina's animated retelling of some social media drama. Mom's gentle attempts to include me in conversations that inevitably drifted back to more interesting people. I nursed my beer and made appropriate sounds at appropriate moments, playing my role as the appreciative audience. "Remember Ned's 21st?" Trina was saying, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant a story was coming whether I wanted it or not. When he got so nervous about the bar that he practiced ordering drinks in his bedroom mirror? Laughter rippled around the room. Mom looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Evan shook his head with fond exasperation, like my social anxiety was just another endearing quirk of his eccentric older brother. "I was prepared," I said mildly, but my voice was lost under Trina's continued narrative. "He had note cards, actual note cards with drink recipes." More laughter. I took another sip of beer and felt that familiar sensation of shrinking, of becoming smaller and smaller, until I was just background noise in my own birthday story. "Should we do cake?" Mom suggested, clearly trying to redirect. "Oh, yes," Trina clapped her hands together. "I made something special for our Ned." She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a chocolate cake that looked professionally made. Beautiful, elaborate, the kind of dessert that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. 42 candles flickered on top, casting dancing shadows across her excited face. "Make a wish, birthday boy." I leaned forward, closed my eyes, and wished for the same thing I'd been wishing for since childhood: to be somewhere else. Anywhere else. I blew out the candles to polite applause. Trina was cutting slices, chattering about the bakery she'd discovered, when she suddenly stopped. "Oh, Ned," she said, her voice taking on that playful tone that had always meant trouble. "You've got a little frosting on your nose." I reached up to wipe it away, but she was faster. "Let me get that for you." What happened next felt like slow motion. Trina grabbed the remaining half of the cake, this beautiful, elaborate, heavy cake, and shoved it directly into my face with a force that sent shockwaves through my skull. The impact was immediate and devastating. Frosting and cake filled my mouth, my nose, my eyes. But worse was the pain that exploded through my jaw and neck as my head snapped back. The room spun. My legs gave out. I hit the hardwood floor hard, cake debris scattered around me like evidence of some dessert-based crime scene. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard laughter. Loud, delighted laughter. "Oh my God, his face!" Trina was practically shrieking with glee. "Ned, you should see yourself." Evan's voice, bright with amusement. I tried to speak, to say that something was wrong, that the pain shooting through my neck and jaw felt like nothing I'd ever experienced. But when I opened my mouth, only cake crumbs came out. "Such a drama queen," someone said. Trina's sister, I think. Phone cameras appeared. Flash after flash as I lay on the floor, covered in my own birthday cake, trying to process what had just happened. "Guys," Mom's voice uncertain, "maybe we should—" "He's fine, Leora," Trina interrupted. "Ned's always been dramatic. Remember the time he sprained his ankle getting out of bed?" More laughter. I managed to push myself up to sitting, cake sliding off my shirt onto the expensive hardwood. My neck felt wrong, like something had shifted that shouldn't have shifted. "I think—" I started, but Evan was already helping me to my feet. "Come on, big brother. Let's get you cleaned up. You look like you lost a fight with a bakery." He guided me toward the bathroom, still chuckling. Behind us, I could hear Trina already spinning the story for social media. "You guys, I just gave my brother-in-law the best birthday surprise ever. He literally fell over. I can't stop laughing." In the bathroom mirror, I looked like a victim. Chocolate cake matted in my graying hair, frosting smeared across my face, but underneath it all, something else. Pain. Real pain that had nothing to do with hurt feelings or wounded pride. I cleaned myself off as best I could, but the ache in my neck was getting worse, not better. When I returned to the living room, the party had already moved on. Someone had cleaned up the cake debris. Trina was showing the photos to her sister, both of them laughing. "Feeling better?" Mom asked quietly, but her eyes were already drifting back to the conversation. "I think I should go," I said. "Aw, Ned, don't be like that," Trina called out. "It was just a joke." Just a joke, the family motto, the excuse for everything from childhood humiliations to adult cruelties. Just a joke, Ned. Don't be so sensitive, Ned. Learn to laugh at yourself, Ned. I gathered my jacket and headed for the door. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Sam. "How's the party?" How was the party? I was 42 years old, covered in cake, in genuine physical pain, and my family thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. I sat in my car for a long moment before starting the engine, watching through the window as the party continued without me. They'd already forgotten I was gone. The birthday boy who'd served his purpose as entertainment was no longer needed. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and growing pain. By the time I reached my apartment, I could barely turn my head. Something was very wrong, but I knew better than to call anyone. They'd already made it clear what they thought of my drama. I fell asleep that night with an ice pack against my neck, listening to my phone buzz with notifications. Probably Trina posting her photos, sharing the hilarious story of her dramatic brother-in-law who couldn't take a joke. But as I drifted off, one thought kept circling through my mind. What if this time the joke had gone too far? I woke up Sunday morning feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The pain in my neck had spread down my spine and up into my skull, a constant throb that made even turning my head an ordeal. In the bathroom mirror, I could see bruising along my jawline that definitely hadn't been there the night before. My phone showed 17 notifications, photos tagged on social media, comments, shares. I scrolled through them, with growing nausea that had nothing to do with my physical pain. Ned's face! I'm losing it! Poor Ned can't handle a little cake. Why is he always so dramatic? It's just frosting. Trina had posted a video. Of course she had. I watched myself collapse in slow motion, watched the cake explode across my face, watched my body hit the floor while laughter echoed in the background. The caption read, "When you surprise your brother-in-law a little too well, don't worry, he's fine. Just Ned being Ned. Birthday, fail, family fun." 137 likes, 43 comments, all of them treating my pain like entertainment. I set the phone aside and tried to remember when this had become normal. When had my family decided that I was the designated target for their amusement? The memories came flooding back as I sat in my quiet apartment, ice pack pressed against my neck. Thanksgiving 3 years ago, when Trina had jokingly loosened the legs on my chair so I'd collapse during dinner. Christmas 2 years back, when she'd replaced my coffee with decaf and spent the entire morning making jokes about how slow I was being. Last summer's barbecue, when she'd playfully pushed me into the pool fully clothed, ruining my phone and wallet. Every time, the same reaction. Laughter, photos, social media posts about poor Ned and his inability to take a joke. And every time I'd cleaned myself up, apologized for being dramatic, and pretended it was fine. But this felt different. This hurt in a way that went beyond embarrassment. My phone rang. Mom. "Ned, honey, how are you feeling this morning?" "I've been better," I said carefully. "Trina feels terrible about last night. She said she didn't mean to push so hard." Of course she did. The post-incident damage control, making sure I wouldn't make a fuss, making sure I'd continue to be the good sport who took whatever they dished out. "Mom, I think she might have actually hurt me. My neck. Oh, sweetheart, you know how Trina is. She's just playful. She loves you like a brother." Loves me like a brother. Right. The kind of love that involved public humiliation and physical pain, apparently. "I know, Mom. Maybe she could tone it down a little." A pause. You know I don't like to take sides, Ned. Family is family. We all just need to get along. Family is family. Another motto, a catch-all excuse for putting up with the unacceptable, as if shared ties somehow made cruelty permissible. After Mom hung up, I sat in my living room and tried to remember the last time anyone in my family had asked how I was doing without it being damage control after one of Trina's jokes. The last time anyone had seemed genuinely interested in my life, my thoughts, my feelings. I couldn't. Monday morning brought a small relief. Work. At my office, I was Ned Mercer, technical supervisor. People respected my expertise, valued my calm problem-solving, trusted my judgment. It was the one place where I wasn't the family punchline. "Morning, Ned," called Maria from the front desk. "How was your birthday weekend?" "Memorable," I said, which was true enough. In my office, I tried to focus on the quarterly reports, but the pain in my neck made concentration difficult. Around 10, my phone buzzed with a text from Trina. "Hope you're not still pouting about last night. You know I love you. It was all in good fun." I stared at the message for a long time. The casual dismissal of my pain, the assumption that my feelings were just pouting, the demand that I accept her version of events where everything was good fun. For the first time in years, I didn't text back immediately with reassurance that everything was fine. "Ned?" My assistant, Rhea, appeared in my doorway. "You okay? You look like you're in pain." It was such a simple question, asked with genuine concern, that I almost teared up. When was the last time a family member had asked if I was okay and actually waited for an honest answer? "Just a little stiff," I said. "Nothing serious." But as the day wore on, it became clear that it might be more serious than I'd thought. The pain wasn't getting better. If anything, it was getting worse. By lunch, I could barely turn my head to the left. I called my doctor's office. "Mr. Mercer?" "Yes, we can squeeze you in this afternoon if it's urgent." Urgent? Was it urgent? Or was I just being dramatic like my family always said? The doctor's visit was routine until it wasn't. Dr. Martinez took one look at the bruising on my jaw and neck and asked the question that changed everything. "How exactly did this happen?" I told him about the cake incident, trying to make it sound casual, normal, just family fun that got a little out of hand. "Someone shoved a cake into your face with enough force to cause this level of bruising and neck strain?" When he said it like that, it sounded different. Less like a harmless prank and more like something else. "If the pain doesn't improve by tomorrow, I want you to come back for x-rays," he said. "This level of impact to the cervical spine, we need to make sure there's no serious damage." Serious damage from a birthday cake. I drove home in a daze, Dr. Martinez's words echoing in my head. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Sam and told him the whole truth. "Jesus, Ned," he said when I finished. "That's not a joke. That's assault." "It's not that serious." "Stop." His voice was sharp. "Stop minimizing this. Someone hurt you deliberately, and your family is gaslighting you into thinking it's funny. That's not normal." Normal? What was normal in my family? Years of being the target, the punchline, the one who was expected to absorb everyone else's cruelty with a smile? "What am I supposed to do?" I asked. "Get those x-rays," Sam said. "Document everything, and stop protecting people who won't protect you." That night, I lay in bed with my laptop, scrolling through years of social media posts. Photo after photo of family gatherings where I was the butt of the joke. Videos of me being surprised or pranked. Comments from relatives and friends treating my humiliation like entertainment. When had I become so disposable? When had my pain become so amusing? My phone buzzed. Another text from Trina. "Ned, you're not seriously mad about a little cake, are you? Don't be such a baby." I stared at the message for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, I turned off my phone without responding. In the darkness of my bedroom, I made a decision. Tomorrow I would get those x-rays, not because I wanted to cause trouble, but because I deserved to know if I was seriously hurt. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop being the family joke. Tuesday night, the pain in my neck had become unbearable. I'd tried ice, heat, over-the-counter painkillers. Nothing helped. Every movement sent sharp jolts down my spine, and a constant headache pounded behind my eyes. At 11 p.m., I finally admitted defeat and drove myself to the emergency room. The ER was surprisingly quiet for a Tuesday night. I checked in with a tired-looking receptionist who took my information without much interest until she saw me trying to turn my head to look at her. "Neck injury?" she asked. "I think so. There was an incident with a cake." She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language, which I suppose I was. "Who goes to the ER because of cake?" "Dr. Rao will see you shortly," she said, handing me a clipboard. Dr. Priya Rao turned out to be a woman in her mid-40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She examined my neck with gentle, practiced hands, her expression growing more serious as she felt along my spine. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said. I found myself downplaying it again, calling it a family prank gone wrong, describing Trina's actions as playful and accidental. The words felt hollow even as I spoke them. Dr. Rao listened without interruption, then asked, "How much force would you estimate was used?" I'm not sure. Enough to knock me down, I guess." "Mr. Mercer, I'm going to order some x-rays. This level of bruising and the pattern of your pain, we need to see what's happening with your cervical vertebrae." Cervical vertebrae, medical terms that made everything sound more serious, more real. The x-ray technician was efficient and impersonal, positioning me carefully while I tried not to think about what they might find. Afterward, I sat in a small examination room, staring at my phone. Trina had posted again, a photo of the cake remnants with the caption, "Still finding cake in weird places. Poor Ned really went down hard. Hope he's not still being dramatic about it." Cake disaster. The comments were worse. "Ned needs to learn to duck. Why is he always so sensitive about everything? It's just cake. Some people have no sense of humor." I was reading these casual dismissals of my pain when Dr. Rao knocked and entered, carrying a folder of films. "Mr. Mercer, I've reviewed your x-rays." Her tone was different now, more careful. "I need to ask you some questions, and I want you to be completely honest with me." She clipped the x-rays to a light board, and even with my limited medical knowledge, I could tell something was wrong. There were areas of swelling and a misalignment in my neck that looked severe, even in black and white. "This injury," Dr. Rao said slowly, "is not consistent with an accidental impact. The force required to cause this level of damage. Mr. Mercer, someone hit you very hard. Hit me. Not pranked me or joked around. Hit me." "It was just cake," I said weakly. "A cake can be a weapon if wielded with enough force. You have significant soft tissue damage, muscle strain, and what appears to be a minor compression fracture in your C4 vertebra." A fracture. Someone had fractured my spine with a birthday cake, and my family thought it was hilarious. "I need to ask," Dr. Rao continued gently, "is this part of a pattern? Has this person hurt you before?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Was it a pattern? Years of jokes that left bruises, pranks that caused pain, fun that was only funny for everyone else? "She doesn't mean to hurt me," I heard myself saying. "She's just playful." Dr. Rao studied me for a long moment. "Mr. Mercer, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know what intentional force looks like, and I know what accidents look like. This was not an accident." She handed me a card with her direct number. "I'm going to write you a prescription for pain management and muscle relaxants. You need to follow up with an orthopedist within the week. And Mr. Mercer," I looked up at her, "you might want to consider documenting this incident, officially." Documenting it officially, reporting it. making it real in a way that went beyond family dynamics and social media jokes. I drove home at 2 a.m. with a prescription bottle rattling in my passenger seat and a copy of my X-rays in a manila envelope. The images that proved what I'd been afraid to admit. I had been hurt. Seriously hurt. By someone who was supposed to care about me. My apartment felt different when I walked in, like I was seeing it through new eyes. This was my safe space, my retreat from a family that treated my pain like entertainment. But it was also evidence of how small my world had become, how I'd shrunk my life to avoid giving them more opportunities to hurt me. I sat at my kitchen table and spread out the X-rays under the overhead light. The evidence was undeniable. This wasn't about being too sensitive or dramatic. This was about actual, measurable harm. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Honey, Trina mentioned you haven't responded to her messages. You're not really upset about the cake thing, are you? You know she didn't mean anything by it." Didn't mean anything by it. A fractured vertebra was apparently nothing in my family's world. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't rush to reassure her that everything was fine. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to document everything. Screenshots of Trina's social media posts, photos of my bruises, copies of the medical records, years of harmless pranks that I'd never reported, never complained about, never treated as anything more than the price of being part of the family. But looking at it all laid out like evidence in a case file, a different picture emerged. Not family fun, but systematic targeting. Not jokes, but cruelty disguised as humor. At 3 a.m., I sent a single text to Sam. "You were right. I have a compression fracture." His response came immediately. "Jesus Christ, Ned, are you pressing charges?" Pressing charges. Taking legal action against my brother's wife for shoving cake in my face. It sounded absurd when I put it like that, but the X-rays didn't lie. The medical records didn't lie. The pattern of escalating jokes didn't lie. I thought about Dr. Rao's careful questions, her professional assessment that this was not an accident. I thought about years of minimizing, excusing, and absorbing abuse because it came wrapped in laughter and family loyalty. And I thought about Trina's latest post, already planning her next joke at my expense, secure in the knowledge that I would never fight back. Maybe it was time to prove her wrong. I saved Dr. Rao's number in my phone and made a note to call her in the morning. Not to downplay what had happened, not to make excuses for Trina, but to ask what documenting this officially actually meant. Because for the first time in 42 years, I was tired of being the punchline. And if my family couldn't see that their jokes had real consequences, maybe it was time for someone else to explain it to them. Wednesday morning brought clarity along with the pain medication. I woke up with a strange sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The fog of family loyalty and ingrained submission had lifted, replaced by something sharper. Determination. I called in sick to work, legitimately for once, and spent the morning organizing what Sam had started calling the case file. Screenshots of every social media post, every cruel comment, every joke that had been made at my expense over the years. The pattern was undeniable when laid out chronologically. Trina's pranks had escalated over time, growing more physical, more humiliating, more dangerous, and my family's response had remained consistently the same: laughter, minimization, and pressure on me to be a good sport. At 10 a.m., I called Dr. Rao's direct line. "Mr. Mercer," she said, and I could hear the concern in her voice. "How are you feeling today?" "Clearer," I said. "About a lot of things. You mentioned documenting this officially. What exactly does that mean?" There was a pause. "It means filing a police report, creating an official record that this assault took place." Assault. She'd used that word again. "I know it's difficult when family is involved," Dr. Rao continued. "But Mr. Mercer, your injury is serious. If this person has hurt you before..." And if they're likely to hurt you again. She will, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. Hurt me again, I mean. She always does. Then you need to protect yourself. I can provide medical documentation to support a report. The choice is yours, but you deserve to be safe, even from family. After we hung up, I sat in my living room staring at my phone. Trina had sent 3 more texts overnight, each one more dismissive than the last. Ned, seriously, stop being weird about this. It's been 2 days, get over it. Evan says you're being dramatic. We all know you're fine. Stop attention-seeking. Attention-seeking. Right. Because fracturing my spine was just my elaborate way of getting noticed. I screenshot those messages too. Around noon, I drove to the police station. Not to file a report, not yet, but to understand what that process would look like. The desk sergeant was professional, but clearly puzzled when I explained I was researching options for reporting a family assault. Support resources for situations at home are available, he said, handing me a pamphlet. And what happened is a serious offense, regardless of relationship. Assault is assault. Another person treating this seriously, seeing it for what it actually was rather than what my family wanted it to be. I spent the afternoon at Sam's apartment, spreading out all my documentation on his kitchen table like a detective working a case. This is insane, Ned, he said, studying the timeline we'd created. Look at this progression. The chair incident, the pool thing, now this. She's been escalating for years. I never saw it like that, I admitted. Each thing seemed isolated, just Trina being Trina. That's how abusers operate. They normalize the behavior, make you think it's your fault for not being able to take a joke. Sam looked up from the papers. Have you told your mom about the fracture? I shook my head. She'll just say I'm overreacting. Then maybe it's time to stop caring what she thinks. That evening, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I was going to the family's monthly dinner at the restaurant this Sunday. Not to confront anyone, not to cause a scene, but to observe, to see how they treated me now that I understood what I was looking at. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of medical appointments and research. The orthopedist confirmed Dr. Rao's assessment. Significant injury, not accidental, requiring weeks of physical therapy. The lawyer I consulted, just for information, I told myself, explained that assault charges were definitely possible, even for something as seemingly innocent as cake shoving. Intent matters less than impact in cases like this, she said. If someone's actions cause bodily harm, their claim that it was just a joke doesn't negate the harm done. By Saturday, I had copies of everything: medical records, photos, social media screenshots, witness contact information. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it all, but for the first time in years, I felt prepared instead of reactive. My phone had been buzzing all week, with increasingly frustrated messages from Trina and pressure from Mom to work things out. I'd responded to none of them, which was apparently driving them crazy. Ned, this silent treatment is ridiculous. Trina's latest voice message sounded genuinely angry. You're acting like I committed a crime or something. It was cake. Get over yourself. A crime. Interesting choice of words. Sunday morning, I dressed carefully for the family dinner. Not in my usual subdued colors, but in a sharp button-down that made me look competent, professional, authoritative. I slipped the manila envelope of documentation into my messenger bag, not planning to use it, but wanting it close. The restaurant was one of those family-friendly places with private dining rooms that Mom liked for gatherings. I arrived exactly on time to find everyone already seated: Mom, Evan, Trina, and Trina's sister, who was apparently extending her visit. Look who finally decided to show up, Trina said with exaggerated cheer. We were starting to think you were still pouting. The word hit differently now. Pouting. like my fractured vertebra was just a temper tantrum. "I've been busy," I said simply, taking the seat across from her. "Busy ignoring your family," Evan added with that easy grin that used to make me feel guilty. Now it just looked weak. I ordered my meal and listened to the familiar dynamics play out around me. Trina dominating the conversation, Evan backing her up, Mom trying to keep peace. The same patterns I'd been accepting for years, but now I could see them clearly. "So Ned," Trina said during dessert, "are you done with your little tantrum? Ready to admit that maybe you overreacted just a tiny bit?" The table went quiet, waiting for my usual capitulation. My practiced apology for being too sensitive, too dramatic, too much trouble for the family to handle. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out one of the X-ray films. "Actually," I said, placing it on the table where everyone could see the clear evidence of spinal damage, "I think my reaction was pretty proportionate." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face went white. "Ned, what is that?" "It's a compression fracture in my C4 vertebra," I said calmly. "From Tuesday night. The doctor said the force required to cause this level of damage was significant." Trina's face cycled through several expressions before landing on defensive anger. "That's not from the cake. That's impossible." "The medical professionals disagree," I said. "They also used some interesting words to describe it. Assault was one of them." Evan leaned forward. "Ned, come on, you're being ridiculous." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and opened Trina's social media post. "Because according to this, I went down hard. Your wife's own words. For the first time in my adult life, I watched my family struggle for words. No easy dismissals, no casual gaslighting. Just the uncomfortable reality of actual consequences staring them in the face. I think," I said, standing and leaving money for my meal on the table, "it's time we all stop pretending this was just a joke." I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, leaving behind a table full of people who had finally run out of ways to minimize my pain. My phone started buzzing before I reached my car, but I didn't answer. I had documentation, medical evidence, and for the first time in years, I had clarity about what came next. It was time to stop being the victim of their entertainment. The week following the restaurant confrontation was strange. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't constantly buzzing with family drama. The silence felt both peaceful and ominous, like the calm before a storm I knew was coming. Mom called once, her voice shaky and uncertain. "Ned, honey, we need to talk about Sunday, about those X-rays." "What about them?" I asked. "Well, surely you don't think Trina meant to hurt you that badly. It was an accident." An accident. Even faced with medical evidence, the family narrative remained unchanged. "Mom, the doctor was very clear. This level of force doesn't happen by accident." "But Ned, she's family. We work these things out within the family." Within the family. Where my pain was always minimized, my concerns always dismissed, my boundaries always violated. Where family meant I was expected to absorb whatever they dished out with a smile. "I'm working it out," I said, "in my own way." I spent the week quietly putting pieces in place. A follow-up with Dr. Rao, who provided a detailed written report about my injuries. A second consultation with the lawyer, who explained exactly what my options were. A visit to the police station, where Detective Lisa Grant listened to my story with professional attention. "These cases are always complicated when family's involved," she said. "But injury is injury. If you decide to file charges, we'll investigate thoroughly." If I decided. The choice was still mine. By Friday, I felt like a general preparing for battle. I had documentation, medical evidence, legal consultation, and something I'd never had before. Absolute clarity about what had been done to me. That's when the invitation arrived. "Family brunch this Sunday at the community center." Trina's text was aggressively cheerful. "Mom's idea. Time to put all this silliness behind us and get back to normal. 11 a.m. sharp. And Ned, I promise no cake." No cake. like the problem had been the dessert choice rather than the assault. I stared at the message for a long time. This was it, the family's attempt to reset, to force everything back to the old dynamic where I absorbed their cruelty and called it love. One final opportunity for them to prove they'd learned nothing, or one final opportunity for me to prove I'd learned everything. "I'll be there," I texted back. Sam called that evening. "Are you sure about this, Ned? You don't owe them a performance?" "I'm not performing," I said. "I'm finishing something. And if they try to gaslight you again, make you feel crazy for standing up for yourself, then I'll have witnesses to that too." Sunday morning, I dressed like I was going to court. Dark slacks, crisp white shirt, tie, professional, serious, unshakable. I packed my messenger bag with everything: medical records, photos, legal documentation, Dr. Rao's report. The community center's event hall was Mom's choice, neutral ground, she'd probably thought. A place where everyone could be civil and work things out like adults. What she didn't know was that I'd already arranged for other adults to be present. I arrived early and chose a seat at the main table where I could see everyone, where everyone could see me. The morning light streamed through tall windows, perfect for illuminating documents if needed. Mom arrived first, looking nervous. Then Evan and Trina, who seemed unusually subdued. A few other family members trickled in, cousins, aunts, the usual suspects who enjoyed our family drama from a safe distance. "Ned," Trina's voice was artificially bright, "you look so serious. It's just brunch, not a business meeting." Just brunch, just cake, just jokes. Everything was always just something harmless in Trina's world. "Sometimes serious conversations happen at brunch," I said mildly. The meal proceeded with forced normalcy. Polite conversation, careful topics, everyone walking on eggshells around the obvious tension. I could feel them waiting for me to apologize, to back down, to return to my assigned role as family punching bag. Instead, I waited. It was Trina who finally broke first, just as I'd known she would. "Okay, I can't take this anymore," she announced, standing up dramatically. "Ned, you've been weird and hostile for 2 weeks over a silly birthday prank. It's time to get over it and move on." The room went quiet. This was the moment, the family's final attempt to force me back into line. "You're right," I said, standing as well. "It is time to address what happened at my birthday." I reached into my bag and pulled out the X-ray films, laying them on the table where the morning light made every detail visible. 2 weeks ago, Trina shoved a cake into my face with enough force to fracture my spine. Gasps around the table. Trina's face went white, then red. "That's not... I didn't. It was just cake." "Just cake," I agreed, pulling out Dr. Rao's report. According to the medical professionals who treated me, just cake, wielded with sufficient force, can cause significant bodily harm. I began reading from the report in a clear, calm voice. Medical terminology that made everything sound exactly as serious as it was. Compression fractures, soft tissue damage, deliberate force patterns. "This is ridiculous." Trina's voice was shrill now. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. It was a joke." "Was it?" I pulled out my phone and began reading her own social media posts. Her own words describing how hard I'd fallen, how dramatic I was being, how funny my pain was to her. The room was completely silent now. Family members who had been prepared to smooth over a simple misunderstanding were suddenly confronted with medical evidence and legal language. That's when Dr. Rao walked in. I'd asked her to come, to explain in professional terms what had been done to me. She approached the table with calm authority, introducing herself to my stunned family. "I treated Mr. Mercer for injuries sustained during what I understand was described as a prank," she said. "I can tell you that the force required to cause his injuries was substantial and deliberate." Trina was sputtering now, looking around the table for support that wasn't coming. Even Evan seemed shaken by the medical professional's assessment. You called the doctor to our family brunch? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. I called a witness, I said. Someone who could explain what really happened to me, since my own family seems incapable of taking it seriously. That's when Detective Grant appeared in the doorway. The effect was immediate and electric. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks clattered against plates. Trina went completely white. Mr. Mercer, Detective Grant said, approaching our table with professional courtesy. Thank you for inviting me to observe this gathering. Observe, not arrest, not interrogate. Just observe the family dynamic that had enabled years of escalating abuse. This is insane, Evan finally found his voice. Ned, you called the police on your own family? I called the police about an assault, I corrected. The fact that it was committed by family doesn't make it legal. The silence that followed was profound. Years of normalized cruelty, brushed off suffering, and casually inflicted harm were suddenly exposed under the harsh light of outside scrutiny. Mom stood up slowly, her face pale but resolute. For a moment, I thought she was going to defend Trina, to minimize everything one more time. Instead, she walked around the table and stood beside my chair. I'm sorry, Ned, she said quietly. I'm sorry I let this go on for so long. The simple acknowledgement hit me harder than any medical diagnosis. My mother, finally seeing what had been done to her son, finally choosing to protect instead of placate. Detective Grant addressed the room with professional calm. Based on the medical evidence and documented pattern of behavior, we'll be conducting a formal investigation into the assault that occurred 2 weeks ago. Trina was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage at being held accountable for the first time in her adult life. This is crazy, she sobbed. It was just a stupid cake. He's ruining our family over nothing. Nothing. Even now, facing police investigation and medical evidence, my pain was still nothing to her. Ma'am, Detective Grant said gently, a compression fracture is not nothing. Assault causing bodily harm is a serious crime. I looked around the table at my family, some shocked, some supportive, some still struggling to process that their entertainment had real consequences. The dynamic had shifted permanently. I was no longer the victim of their jokes. I was the person who had finally said enough. As Detective Grant and Dr. Rao prepared to leave, I gathered my documentation and stood to go as well. Ned, Trina called out desperately. You can't seriously be pressing charges over a birthday prank. I turned back to look at her, this woman who had spent years treating my pain like her personal entertainment, who had fractured my spine and called it love. It stopped being a prank the moment you hurt me, I said, and it stopped being funny the moment I stopped laughing. I walked out of that community center with my head held high, my evidence in hand, and my family finally understanding that some jokes have consequences. The boy who had spent 42 years being the punchline was gone. In his place stood a man who knew his worth, who had documentation to prove his pain, and who was no longer willing to sacrifice his dignity for anyone's amusement. The laughter had finally stopped, and for the first time in my life, the silence felt like victory. Epilogue. 6 months later, I sat in my apartment reading the final legal documents. Trina had pled guilty to assault in the 3rd degree, receiving probation and mandatory anger management counseling. The civil settlement would cover my medical expenses and then some. But the real victory wasn't legal or financial. It was the text message from Mom that morning. Sunday dinner at my house, just the 3 of us, you, me, and Evan. Trina isn't invited until she completes her counseling and makes a real apology. Boundaries, consequences, accountability, words that had never existed in my family's vocabulary before. My phone buzzed. Sam. How does it feel to be the brother who fought back? I looked around my apartment. The same space, but somehow larger now. Not a hiding place anymore, but a home base. A place I returned to by choice, not necessity. It feels like respect, I typed back, because that's what I'd learned through this whole ordeal. Respect isn't something you earn by being the perfect victim, by absorbing mistreatment with a smile, by making yourself small enough that others feel big. Respect is something you claim by refusing to accept less than you deserve. The X-ray images were framed on my wall now, not as trophies, but as reminders. Evidence that my pain was real, my boundaries were valid, and my voice mattered. Trina had been right about one thing. I had changed our family forever. I'd taught them that some jokes aren't funny, some pranks have consequences, and some brothers fight back. The birthday cake incident had ended with me on the floor, covered in frosting while my family laughed. But the story that followed, the story of standing up, speaking truth, and demanding better, that story ended with me standing tall. And that's a punchline I could live with.